Hello everyone. Let's review shlokas 36 through 40 in Lalita Sahasranamam. Moolamantratmika Moolakootatrayakaleebara Kulamrutaikarasika Kulasanketapalini Kulangana Kulandasta Kaulini Kulayogini Akula Samayantasta Samayacharatatpara Mooladharaikanilaya Brahma Granthi Vibedini मणिपूरान्तरुदिता विष्णुग्रन्थिविभेदिनी आज्ञाचक्रान्तरालस्ता रुद्रग्रन्थिविभेदिनी सहस्राराम्बुजारूढा सुधासाराभिवर्षिणी तडिल्लता समरुचिः षट्चक्रोपरि संस्थिता महाशक्तिकुण्डलिनी बिसदन्तुदनीयसी. Now let's take a look at the meanings. Before we review the shloka lines, it is helpful to understand some concepts called Kundalini and Granthis. So the shlokas 36 through 40 actually talk about the subtlest form of Lalita, which is called as Kundalini. In the previous video, we covered the first line of 36, which is Moola Mantratmika Moola Kootatraya Kalebara. That is part of the Panchadasi mantra, which is the subtle form of Lalita. So that first line says that she is the embodiment of that Moola mantra, the root mantra called Panchadasi, and the three kutas of the Panchadasi mantra make up the body of Lalita. Kalebara is the body. So we won't go too much into detail there. You can review the previous video. Today we'll cover from the second line of 36 up to 40, and these actually refer to the Kundalini, which is the subtlest form of Lalita. So let's try to understand what is Kundalini. So Kundalini in Sanskrit means a coiled snake, and it represents energy that is residing in every individual at the base of the spine that is unused, and the head of the snake is actually blocking our ability to release that energy. And by either chanting the mantra or the physical exercises or pranayama, we are able to release that energy. So let's understand this in a little bit more detail. So it is said that Shiva and Shakti are the two complementary aspects of that one ultimate reality that's referenced in Advaita. So when Shiva and Shakti are facing each other, there is no creation or no manifestation of the universe. Everything is in perfect balance, everything is contained. When Shakti turns away from Shiva, that's when the universe manifests. So that Shakti is called as Prana Kundalini. That's the cosmic energy. When that manifests into different forms, each form has a little bit of that energy, which is called as Prana Shakti. And that Prana Shakti, the energy of that universe, which is the creative and spiritual potential that each one of us have, that is available to each one of us, is sitting at the base of our spine. But on a normal basis, we don't even tap a portion of that Prana Shakti. We use a very small portion called Pranavayu, and that's how we use to conduct our lives. So that energy is sitting there. And in the Yoga Shastra, they say that just like we have a physical body, we also have an energy body. And in that energy body, there are several channels that carry energy. Just like we have arteries and veins that carry blood, we have a circulatory system within our physical body. There is a system for circulating energy. And the nadis are the energy channels. So they carry that energy. And it's the life energy. It is based on the breath. So the prana, it is what we inhale and exhale. So there are these energy channels. So there are three energy channels that are very important. There are several energy channels, but there are three that we need to understand. One is Ida, which is the left channel, Pingala, which is the right channel, and then there is a central channel called Sushumana. And generally in our body, there are energy centers. That energy center is where many energy channels meet, one or more energy channels meet, and it's called as chakras. And we have many chakras in our body. There are seven that's along the spine. So they are Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata, Vishuddhi, Agnya, and Sahasrara. So those are, Sahasrara is not in the physical body, it's above the body. So these are the chakras where the energies meet, and when the Kundalini rises, then we are able to, the energy can rise all the way and it can go from the Mooladhara chakra and hit the Sahasrara. And it's said that when it hits the Sahasrara, there is a nectar that is available at the top, and that flows down the throat, and then people are enlightened. All these are the concepts around the Kundalini Yoga. So in real world, what does that Kundalini mean? And all these yoga could be the concepts, but what does that really mean? So if you look at all human beings, we all have our own worldview, right? And that worldview is a result of who we are, our personality, certain natural tendencies that we have, the family where we were born, how we were raised, what kind of experiences we went through in our life. All this shapes our worldview, right? So the worldview is the lens through which we view the world, right? So sometimes what happens is we are not very aware of our own worldview, and therefore we interpret certain things according to our experiences and products. So, for example, I ate bitter gourd, right? Karela. The first time I bit into it, I was a child and it tasted bitter. Okay? As a child, at that time, my expectation was everything had to be sweet. So, this is not sweet. Therefore, bitter gourd is not something that I like. Therefore, bitter gourd is not something I will eat. And if you see, for many of us, we hold this and will never eat bitter gourd later on, right? Why? Because as a child, when you ate it, that's not what you were expecting. Your worldview as a child was everything had to be sweet, it had to taste nice. We weren't used to appreciating sour and bitter taste. That became how we conditioned ourselves, and therefore, even when you become an adult, if somebody serves bitter gourd, we don't want to eat it, right? So this is a very simple example, but there is a conditioning that you see, and that was because of the experience. At that time, we were expecting something. So, most of the time, what happens is this worldview we hold, and as I told you, all these three things come into there: who we are, what we want from life, and how we are conditioned to behave. These three things together make us create that worldview. And because we hold that worldview, we interpret what is happening according to that worldview, and that creates happiness or anger or sadness, or we feel all these emotions. But once we drop this worldview, which is our own, and start to look at the world as it is, then there is clarity. And Kundalini awakening is that clarity. Our ability, and usually for human beings, it's very hard for us to drop our worldview, no matter how smart we are. It is very hard for us to drop that worldview, because that is the basis on which we understand what's happening around us, right? So we've created all these mechanisms. Now, simple worldview is even the knowledge, right? If I have to go by train, then I have to buy a ticket. I have to go to the train station. I should be there, and I will need to ride through the train station. These are also the part of conditioning. So now if we have to go by train, we don't sit here and think through what should I do, right? It just allows us to navigate life. So dropping this worldview means going all the way and completely not having any impressions, being without any perceptions, being without any preconceived notions, which is also all the information we have accumulated about how to navigate in this life. So it's not very easy for us to drop that, right? But and again, this does not mean Kundalini awakening doesn't necessarily mean that we should drop everything and then become reclusive and then go into solitude or anything like that. But the Kundalini awakening allows us to not always think about what we are perceiving, but it also allows us to start turning inward and think about why we have these perceptions. And the perceiver that we are, it allows us to understand a little bit more about ourselves. When we start to understand more about ourselves, this worldview is like a lens that we are wearing. Now, if you are looking outside and you're wearing red colored glasses, everything that you see will have a tinge of red. If you remove those glasses and look at it, the colors will be different. A typical advertisement for a Ray-Ban, right? Everything looks beautiful when you look through Ray-Ban, but it's coloring, right? There is a tinge of color that's come through. So that all of us just look at life through that color, and we add our own colors to that. And so, someone who looks like this will only behave like this. These are all conditionings that we have. When Kundalini awakens, we have the ability to understand, first of all, that we are wearing this lens, and it allows for us to be able to remove that lens and therefore look at things as they are. That's what, if you can look at things as they are and not add color to it, that means we are realized. We are able to perceive the reality. Until otherwise, we are always wearing that lens and everything is colored for us, and therefore, whatever we are perceiving, it's called subjective reality. Another person looking at the same thing may perceive it differently. So we can be wearing red color lens, somebody else might be wearing blue color lens, somebody else might be wearing green color lens. It's each one's worldview, and that's how they process it. So Kundalini awakening allows for us to drop that worldview and go beyond the grooves of conditioning and change the way we think, we act, we feel, we connect with other people. All of those can change with the Kundalini. And that again comes back to the same thing, right? As we worship Lalita and we are continuing to engage with her, she's giving us this ability to drop all these past impressions that we have carried and become pure at heart, and then realize our oneness with other people, oneness with this universe, and oneness with that ultimate reality. And that's what the realization process or the awakening process is. So, in the yogas, what they say is, as this energy is rising, it is possible for the energy to get stuck in three places. And those areas where the energy can get stuck is called as Granthi. Granthi means knot. So, the first place where it can get stuck is the Brahma Granthi. So the knot Brahma Granthi, Brahma knot. So this Brahma Granthi is everything that we hold dear. So we saw Kundalini awakening means ability for us to change the way we think, we act, and we feel, and go past our conditioning. And that means we are completely transformed, right? So what can stop us in that transformation? The first thing is everything we hold dear, right? Our attachments. Whatever gives us security, whatever gives us purpose in our life. How can that stop us? Because it's taking us back to the same conditioning. If this is a priority, then we act in a certain way. So the first place where it can get stuck is the Brahma Granthi. Another obstacle for us in being able to rise to that awareness is the Vishnu Granthi. Vishnu Granthi is the way we perceive ourselves, right? It is the ahamkara. The image we have of ourselves and everything that we do in order to preserve that image that we have of ourselves. So that is again an obstacle. And if we think we are the most powerful person, let's say, our self-image includes us being someone who's powerful, then you're going to take actions to go get a powerful title, or you become the most important person in an organization or something like that, right? Because that is important to you, then the actions we are taking is driven by that need to feel important. And that need to feel important is coming because we see ourselves as a powerful person. So that is the impression, the image we have of ourselves. So that is an obstacle. And the final thing that can be an obstacle, the Rudra Granthi, is the conditioning that we have. And this is the hardest to break because this conditioning is so deep in us that we are not even thinking twice about how we are reacting, right? It's just so embedded in us. It's gone through so many times of reinforcement that it becomes the way we are, right? So, for example, as a child, if someone was in a dark room, right, and the child has as a child they had this fear of dark, it doesn't matter. The moment their power's out or in a dark room, that fear and everything comes back, and there is no time to think about it, right? So that could be the conditioning. So there is a small story about Adi Shankara that can help us understand the vasanas or the Rudra Granthi and how strong it can be. As we all know, Adi Shankara, he started to go on the sannyasi path even when he was a child, like 8 years old. And when his guru asked him, "Who are you?" He did this Atma Shatakam where he said who he was, and I'm not this body, I'm not this. So he's that kind of a acharya and a sannyasi who has gone through this path. He's an enlightened being. Once Adi Shankara was near the Ganges and he was going with his disciples. At that time, there was a man who was like, and in those days, they use certain words called, Chandala. And he was someone who was dressed very dirtily, and he didn't look like he had taken bath for many days. He looked like a person who lived in the crematorium, and he had all these filthy dogs with him. He came across, and Adi Shankara is from the highly practicing all the rituals properly. He comes from that kind of community. So acharam and keeping yourself clean and keeping everything clean is kind of part of who he is. So this Chandala, sorry for the word, but that's what they use. But he comes across, and it said that Adi Shankara just took bath and came, saw this guy, and thought, "Oh my gosh, I crossed this guy, so now I have to, my acharam is broken, so I have to go take bath again." So he went and took bath, came back again. Again, this guy came in the bath. So then he took bath again, and the third time, even for a saint like Adi Shankara, he said, "Do not cross this path, stay back." And then the Chandala asked him, "Who's asking who to stay back? If you are the body and I am the body, then that makes sense. But you said we are the soul, in which case, how come soul can have any impurity?" At that point, Adi Shankara realizes that, there is oneness of everything. All of us are soul. We are not our body. We are not our mind. We are that Atma, that is the perceiver, the witness that's looking at everything. So at that time, Adi Shankara gets that enlightenment, and then he falls at the feet of that person, and then that person turns out to be Shiva, and Shiva just came to break that final vasana. So even for somebody like Adi Shankara, he was born in a Brahmin community. Acharam was something that was so critical. Even for someone who was proponent of Advaita Vedanta, it was hard for him to break that vasana until that incident happened. So vasanas can be, because he felt like acharam was broken. Acharam meant that physical purity. If somebody like this crosses, then yours is spoilt, and therefore you need to go take bath. So vasanas are like that. They are very hard to break. So Rudra Granthi is one of the hardest one to break. So with this overview of the Kundalini and the Granthis, now let's take a look at the meanings of these. Kula Amritaika Rasika. So Amritam is the nectar. Kula Amritaika Rasika means she is the taste of the nectar in the Kula. Kula here refers to that Sushumna Nadi, if you will. At one end is this coiled serpent, which we call as Shakti. At the other end is Shiva. And when Shakti reaches Shiva, there is the nectar which then goes through the throat. That is the enlightenment. So that is called Amrita. So she is the taste of the nectar. Kula Sanketa Palini. Sanketam means secret, signals. So Kula Sanketa Palini, she keeps this secret. The Kula, the Kundalini is a secret. She maintains that secret. Why does she maintain that secret? It's not because none of us are supposed to get it. Lalita keeps that a secret until we have become ready to receive it. Until that point, she keeps it a secret from us because it is extremely powerful. Even with this awakening, sometimes if we are not ready to receive it, this is too much energy flowing, then we may not be able to handle it, right? So if you look at it, when we use electrical appliances, if you have 110 volts, you should only plug in 110 volts. If you put it with 220 volts, it can cost the whole appliance to get repair. So therefore, it is very important that you plug 110 into 110, 220 to 220, like that. This is even more than that. That is that much energy. So Lalita keeps it safe, keeps us all safe, and keeps it a secret from us until we are all ready to receive it. Kulangana, Kulantasta, Kaulini, Kulayogini. Kulangana means she is committed to the Kula. Kulantasta, Kula Antasta, that means she resides at the end of the Kula. Kaulini, Kaulini means she is belonging to the Kula. She is of the Kula. Kula Yogini, Kula Yogini means she is the ruler of the Kula. So in all of this, Kula, interpret that as the Sushumna Nadi where the energy rises. Akula. Akula also means as devoid of Kula. So what this means is, generally we view Kula as the Sushumna Nadi where Shakti is at one end and Shiva is another end. And it's always said that Shakti is rushing to meet Shiva. But actually, if you see, Shakti and Shiva are never separate. So it's not her rushing to meet Shiva. It is the progressive awareness of in ourselves of Shakti and Shiva being one and the same. Which means, in colloquial terms, it is the increasing in awareness for us about our oneness with everything else in this universe. That's why it's devoid of Kula. And in this case, you can see that she is both the immanent and the transcendent thing. Samayantasta. So Samayantasta means she is residing in the inner worship as Shakti. So Samaya means internal, and she is one who is achieved by the internal worship, and she is attained through that internal worship. Samayachara Tatpara. So she is devoted to the Samayachara, or she likes the Samayachara. So it's kind of related. Let's take a look at it. So there are Achara means to attain, okay, a path, if you will. So there are, in the Sri Vidya tradition, there are at least 5 paths to attain Shakti or Lalita. So the first path is called as Samayachara. Samayachara is one where you worship her internally, right? So there is no external rituals, nothing. Internally, in your mind, you are worshipping Lalita. And in this Samayachara, we follow all the rules that the society says are good, right? whatever is the commonly accepted behavioral norms, we follow that, except that we don't do any external worship. Everything is internalized. Even if you see in Lalita Sahasranam, the Dhyanam is supposed to internalize that picture of Lalita, and we can say all those mantras internally. And the next one is called as Dakshinachara. This Dakshinachara is like Samayachara, but a little bit of external rituals are acceptable. So you can do some puja and all that. That is Dakshinachara. These two are called right-handed, and they always adhere to all the norms that the society has. Whatever is considered as good behavior, that they will continue to do. The next one is called as Kaulachara. In Kaulachara, they allow any behavior that's not considered the norm by normal society standards. So, for example, if you are someone who is worshipping God, generally, if you see, we would practice not eating meat, vegetarianism. Somebody would not have alcohol. These are all, and then celibacy is very important. These are all things that are considered norm, right? And then even in daily life, human beings are expected to conduct themselves in the appropriate way, right? Too much of alcohol consumption, even if you're not in the spiritual path, is not encouraged by the society. So the right-handed methods are all ones that follow that properly. In Kaulachara, this is liberation, but if you can think about it in one way, the first place where they're trying to liberate is from the norms of the society. So therefore, they can consume meat, they can consume alcohol, they take fish, extramarital sex is allowed. There is also the mudras that they use in order to get to this path. So these are all allowed in a Kaulachara. Again, they are allowed in the sense that they are still trying to reach that liberation or awakening or the enlightenment. And that's why in these paths, it's extremely important to have a teacher, because if you're trying to work it out of your system and you're practicing all of this, sometimes those things can be more stronger than who we are, and therefore it can consume us instead of us consuming that. So these paths are all slippery slope. That's why it's not subscribed or well advertised or as a path for everybody, because not everyone will be strong enough to overcome all of this. But these paths make use of this as a means to enlightenment. Then there is Vamachara. The Vamachara and Kaulachara may only differ in how much of those 5 things that I said is allowed or not. So it's a scale, that's it. So some are not allowed, some are okay in Vamachara, but Kaulachara, all the 5 are allowed. And then there is a Misrachara, which is kind of a combination of the left-handed and the right-handed methods. So these are the 5 ways in which people pursue Lalita or the paths to attain Lalita. And of that, Samayachara Tatpara. Samayachara is the first one, where internalizing Lalita and not using any external rituals, that's what she likes. So that's why you don't have to do any major puja or anything like that. Just reciting these names, constantly engaging with Lalita is sufficient for us to reach that path. Mooladharaika Nilaya Brahma Granthi Vibedini. So Mooladharaika Nilaya means she is in the Mooladhara Chakra, which is the first one. And when she is in that Mooladhara Chakra, what happens? Brahma Granthi Vibedini. She severes the Brahma Granthi. And we said the Brahma Granthi is everything that gives us purpose in life, that we hold dear. Anything that gives us security, our attachments, all of this is the Brahma Granthi. And if we have to change the way we think, act and feel, first we have to let go of all these attachments. Only then we can move towards the next path. So when the Kundalini rises up to the Mooladhara, the Brahma Granthi is severed. Manipuranta Rudita Vishnu Granthi Vibedini. And then once she comes from the Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, she emerges at the Manipura. So Manipura is the chakra which is near the Nabi. And when she comes there, then Vishnu Granthi Vibedini. Vishnu Granthi, she severes the Vishnu Granthi. Vishnu Granthi is the image we have of ourselves, right? The ahamkaram, what we perceive ourselves to be. Agnya Chakra Antaralasta, making her way up to the Agnya Chakra, which is at the near the eyebrows, between the two eyebrows. Rudra Granthi Vibedini, she severes the Rudra Granthi. We said the Rudra Granthi is the vasanas or the impressions, the past impressions that we have, and these are so embedded into our psyche that sometimes we don't even think about all of this. We just immediately react to things based on these past impressions. So she severes, when she emerges, when she makes her way up to the Agnya Chakra, then she severes the Rudra Granthi. Sahasraram Bujaruda, Sahasrara Ambuja Ruda. So once she makes her way up to the Sahasrara, so there is the seventh chakra which is viewed as a 1,000-petal lotus. So when she ascends to that, Arudam means to raise. So when she ascends to the Sahasrara, which is considered as a 1,000-petal lotus, at that point Sudha Sarabi Varshini. So this Sudha is called as a nectar. It's the Amrita. At that time, the entire nectar just rains down. So she showers with the Sudha Sarabi, which is the Amrita. She showers the Amrita when she reaches up to the 1,000-petal lotus. Tadillata Samaruchihi. Tadillata means lightning. So she's flashing forth as a brilliant light. So at that point of enlightenment, it's said that there is this brilliant light that you can see. Shat Chakra Upari Samstita. She then settles above the Shat Chakra, all the 6 chakras. So Sahasrara is above the body. So she settles above the 6 chakras. Mahashakti Kundalini. So Mahashakti is the one who is becoming attached as the coiled one, the snake, the Kundalini. So she is the Mahashakti Kundalini. Bisa Tantu Taniyasi. So Bisa means lotus. Tantu means the stalk or fiber. Taniyasi means she is as subtle as the stalk of the or the fiber in the lotus stalk. So as Kundalini, she is as subtle as the fiber in the lotus stalk. So that says that the Kundalini, the Mahashakti, the great power called Kundalini, is the subtlest form of Lalita, and it is as subtle as the fiber in the lotus stalk. And why are they referring to the lotus here? Lotus is always a symbol of enlightenment. If you look at the lotus, it's firmly in the muddy waters, right? Yet it makes an effort and reaches above the dirt and blooms into the most pristine flower it can be. Like that, when the Kundalini awakens, each one of us can also race through our ignorance. That muddy water is the ignorance. Race through our ignorance, and when it reaches the Sahasrara Ambuja, the Sahasrara Chakra, then we can have self-knowledge or the enlightenment. Thank you, everyone.